So recently I was at the airport and I was waiting for uh, boarding to start on a flight. And so I got to the gate. I kind of got to the gate late, which isn't very typical for me, but it was the boarding time, and I'm one of those people that actually expects to board when when we hit the boarding time. And they had set up these different lanes, so I immediately found the lane that corresponded to my boarding group, and I was waiting there. There was one other person when we started, and then the line started filling up. And I knew the plane was there. I had seen the people get off, and every now and then I would see um, one of the attendants moving in and out of the door. But for whatever reason, they just weren't starting the boarding thing. And then the gentleman picked up the mic and started saying some some things, but it didn't correspond to boarding. So at this point, I start getting uh, pretty antsy, or I would say that the term is it's kind of, I would say it's impatient. Um, and that's a situation where I get really impatient, where I just, oh my God, I feel like, come on, we got to board, we got to take off. It's really important, even though it wasn't that important. A few minutes here or there, not a big deal. So that's one example where I sort of go into impatience. I would say pretty much anytime you put me in a line, I'll start getting impatient if I feel like the process isn't running that quickly. Other times I get impatient. They're not always the same, but they have a similar structure. I remember I was reading this book series, the girl with the dragon tattoo, which were fantastic and really exciting, and I just flew through the first book. I just couldn't put it down, and I immediately got the second book, and I was just, I read it in a couple of days, and I'm not a quick reader, but the book was it pulled you in so much that I just kept reading and reading and reading, and I remember it was about 11 p.m. For some reason, I remember it was 11 p.m. on a Tuesday night, and I was just flying to the end of the second book, and I got to the end of the book, and even though that book ended, it was a bit of a cliffhanger for the third book. And so immediately I was going to download the book, and I went online and I realized that the book hadn't been released in the States yet in download form. And so all of a sudden I got so impatient, like, oh, I got to have this book now. And in fact, it was such a strong feeling that I went on the website and looked for one of those books, like, if you like this book, you'll like this one. I bought a book from another series and started reading that. So that's another time I get impatient. And I would say same thing if I'm watching a series that I really like and it comes to the end of a season. Usually I'm hoping that there's another season. But recently, a couple of times, I got to the end of a season of something, and I found out there was going to be a third season, but it wasn't even in production yet. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, when is this going to happen? So that's another time when I get impatient. So those are some examples, and I share those hopefully to let you find similar experiences of where you get impatient. So now let's look at the structure a little bit. I always like to sort of unpack kind of the cognitive structure of a particular emotion. And a couple talks ago, I was talking about the structure of looking forward to something. And it's funny, I get excited when I'm looking forward, but I don't necessarily get impatient. Or I would say, for me, impatience is may related to looking forward to something, like waiting for the next season of a show. But for me, it's much stronger intensity. And like looking forward to something, it's a future orientation, right? There's something that we expect to happen, or we're believing will happen. In my case, I'm like with the case with the airplane, I'm thinking it should happen now or very, very soon. And the more that it isn't happening, the more impatient I become. I think another time I get impatient, speaking of flying, is if I'm on a long flight and if I'm constantly thinking about, when are we going to get there? It's like the little kid, like, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Then I'll get very impatient. And especially if we have to stop a lot, or not, obviously not stopping when you fly, but if you're driving somewhere and you stop. So again, it's a future orientation. It's a feeling that it's supposed to happen at a specific time, and maybe that it's getting stretched out. I find I get impatient whenever I feel like there's sort of bureaucracy or red tape that's happening. So let's look at two things. What can we do about impatience when it happens if we don't want to experience it? And I always like to know where could this be useful, and how can we do it intentionally? So let's talk about what to do when it's there and maybe we don't want it. And I'll tell another story about when I was waiting in line years ago, when you had to wait in line at the bank more. I was in line at this bank here in New York, and I started, first it was like sort of boredom, but the line was going very slowly, so I started getting a bit impatient. And then I looked up and I noticed that it was very clever. They had put in a TV monitor, and they were playing a movie, and they were playing this James Bond movie, and kind of the not the arch nemesis, but the bad guy's assistant was the really tall guy that used to be on the 7-Up ads years ago. He's a famous guy. I can't remember the actor's name. And so I'm watching him and I'm watching James Bond on the screen. And for a moment I got lost in that, and I forgot about the impatience. So we'll look at that. That's a clue. But then the funny thing that happened was I turned around and there was this tall guy behind me, and I took a look at him, and then I looked at the screen and I looked at him again. And then I said to him, I said, is that you? And he said, yeah, that's me. And it turned out it was the actor that was in the movie. And it was just this strange coincidence that he happened to come in the bank, into the branch that I was at when I was watching this James Bond movie. So what happened there that snapped me out of impatience? Really what happened was I got entertained with something else. I momentarily let go of the outcome of needing to, get to the teller, and I put my attention somewhere else. And I think this is a really key trick if you're going to be stuck in line, or you're getting caught up in impatience and you don't want to be impatient. Now, a lot of times people say, I'd like to be more patient. I have clients say that to me all the time. I'd like to be more patient. And what that usually tells me is that they're not patient, which means they're perhaps being impatient with other people, perhaps being short-tempered, and putting your attention on something else and sort of momentarily coming to acceptance with whatever isn't happening is a great way to essentially shift your attention and calm down, and sort of let go of that immediate pressure that you're actually putting on yourself cognitively. My belief is these structures are all things that we're doing. We may not know that we're doing them, but we can become aware of them and see how our brain is doing them. They're things that we've learned. And if we learn them, we can unlearn them. So for me, that's a really useful, I found that to be very useful. Great example is when I'm on a long flight, if you fly to Asia, it's 14 hours, and you're going to get bored and you're going to get impatient. And so, I really prepare for that now. When I go on a flight, I have a list of activities to do that, I have 2 days of stuff. I have movies to watch in addition to the movies that are on the plane. I have work that I can get done. I have video games. I do yoga on the plane, books on tape, so I have all these things there. And so now I don't get as impatient, because I just know, okay, it's like being at work for 8 hours, and you do that, and then you take a nap, and then you wake up and you're in Tokyo. So that's an example of doing the same thing. Like, I'm shifting my attention to something else. Another place that people get impatient, which can be problematic, is in terms of going for goals and how they are tracking their progress. And the way people get in trouble, and I'm going to do a talk on this, a slightly longer talk, that is, if their evidence for progress is completing the goal, if it's a big goal, first of all, you're going to be very dejected along the way, because every day you're going to check, is it there yet? Is it there yet? And the answer will be no, until it's like, if you're writing a book and your evidence is the book is done, boy, it's going to be a long haul. So you want to create very, very, very small markers along the way to know that you've made progress. And sometimes the marker is just showing up to do your work. So tracking really small increments at least gives you a feeling of progress throughout, and you can do so much course correcting, which is really fantastic, and sort of keeps your state going. And actually, that's that's the structure of a flow state. And again, another topic, but the author Csikszentmihalyi, the book Flow, one of the key elements of a flow state is incremental challenges that are right at the edge of where you are skill-wise, like just right at the edge. So you're constantly testing right there, and that keeps you engaged, keeps you interested, and most people will go into a flow state and can work for many, many hours. Now let's talk about where impatience could be useful, and how to do it perhaps more intentionally. I think impatience can be really useful if you're not getting stuff done. If you can build some impatience around it, at least when I kind of layer this structure of impatience on things that I'm not getting done, all of a sudden I feel like I got to get that done. I can't sit around and wait. Like, let's just do this right now. And one of the places I noticed this was, I play guitar, but I don't always practice. Like, it's not a regular thing. I play when I feel like playing. But one thing I noticed was, almost every time that I went on vacation or I was traveling and I didn't bring my guitar with me, oh my God, suddenly I want to play. And it's just a little mental trick, but if I want to be playing more and I'm not, when I'm home, I imagine that my guitar is somewhere else. And then all of a sudden I go, oh my God, it's here. And then I can pick it up and I can play. So I know I'm pretending a little bit, but I'm using imagination or pretending to move my experience in a direction that I want. And I think sometimes it's good to add some impatience. Very often, if you have goals that you feel like, oh, there's all the time in the world, like why bother working on this now? It's great to layer some impatience on top of it. Another way that I do that is I'll think about a day or a week or a month, and I'll ask myself the question, what do I want to have done by the end of that time frame? And all of a sudden, what can seem like a long time frame, like a month, that seems like a lot of time. If I think, what do I want to get done? Then all of a sudden I feel like, oh my gosh, I want to pack all this stuff in there, and I'm less likely to just like let time pass. So again, the structure of impatience is sort of having an expectation that something is going to happen and that it's going to happen in a relatively short time frame or in a specific time frame, and then seeing that it isn't happening in that time frame, and that sort of builds this internal kind of pull forward. Like I said, I'll also do a talk on sort of how we track progress, or what's our evidence for getting goals done. So yeah, I encourage you to impatiently or with patience explore this and see where it's useful for you.